Hey everybody, Mr. Regan here. And last lesson, you guys really began to dive into the idea of how forces act within a collision. And by the end of the lesson, hopefully we were able to observe some patterns for how different objects are affected by different forces whenever they collide with other objects. By the end of the lesson, hopefully the big thing we took away was that key concept that whenever objects collide, okay, we know that the forces are going to be equal but in opposite directions. So, meaning when they collide, the strength of the forces from one object and from the other object are going to be the same, but they're going to be in opposite directions. So, they'll be exerted on each other in opposite directions, but they're going to be equal strength. Now, this idea can be very insightful and confusing when we look at different objects. And today we're really going to explore a little bit more of that. We're going to dive into our warm up activity where we're going to revisit some of these collision ideas that you did from the previous lessons. Collisions like where we had objects that were moving 1 minute and maybe not moving the next, or collisions with objects that had high velocity or low velocity, collisions with objects that's masses were high or some of their masses were low. So notice we're really exploring this idea of how mass, velocity, and force have that relationship stuff from earlier lessons, but now we're looking at how mass, force, and velocity come together with collisions, okay? And we're going to do that by diving into this warm-up activity, and we're going to be diving into our simulator again. So make sure when we get done, you put your X in your row and reach out to me if you put it in either the middle or the bottom row, all right? So what's going to happen is you're going to hop into our task number 2 and get into our Amplify page, which is going to take you here. And you're going to be completing tasks 1 through 4 in here. So you're going to be completing this prediction question to start. You're going to be diving into our force simulator and finding the 3.3 warm-up activity in the menu. I'll show you that here in a second. You're going to record the mass of each of the objects that are going to be colliding within our simulator down here. Massive object A, massive object B, and then you're going to run our different tests for our collisions, okay? Similar to what we did before, you'll look to our data table here to figure out how my collisions should look. You'll set up your velocities for object A and object B, and then in here, you're going to be recording a change in velocity. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that means. So we're going to click on our simulator here. It's going to take us to this page. You're going to need to go to the top left corner to find the sim menu. And from here, you'll need to scroll all the way down to find the 3.3 warm-up activity. Okay. So from here, you'll have to look back at your data table to figure out, okay, well, what do I need to set my initial velocity? And then we'll look at how to find the change. So I'm going to use a different velocity than we're used to. I'm actually going to put my velocity here at 2. Okay. But I'm going to look at hitting my run button, allowing the collision to happen, then hitting my analyze button. So from here, this is where I'm going to get all my information from my data table. So here's my data for my masses. So that's going to go into here for object A and object B. You'll have to find that and put that in there. But your change in velocity for object A and B, well, we're going to have to look up here. So if we look at object A, that was our very first object here. If I rewind it, you notice we have equal but opposite forces are acting on my two objects. My object A had a start velocity of 2, and then its current velocity, meaning after the collision, was 1.2. So it had a change of -8. Okay, so if that was one of the starting velocities and the initial velocity for B, I would look for the change in velocity for A would be that change column here. So I would have put -0.8. Okay, notice my change for object B is 3.2. So if this was 2 centimeters to the right, 0 centimeters, then this would have been -0.8 centimeters per second, and this would have been 3.2 centimeters per second. Now your job is to go in here, recreate these collisions, find that change in velocity, and take a look at what's happening. When you're done, hit the hand in button, and then you're all set. If you have questions, reach out to me. Otherwise, let's go ahead and begin exploring that big question that we were looking at the very beginning. In a collision, how do forces affect the object? Here we go.